I think overall athletics can teach you so much about life and how to address adversity and how to handle winning. Quite honestly, there's appropriate way to handle winning, and there's an appropriate way of handling losing. And I think sports give you opportunity to learn that core value.
Welcome to Shaping the Basin. I am here with Todd Andres. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, excellent, thank you.
Good. I am not sure how I want to introduce you because I met you as Taco Todd,
Yeah,
and then most people know you from your most recent job. But I actually kind of want to talk to you about Coffee with Todd,
yes,
your
yeah,
new venture.
yeah. It's something that I just kind of got a wild hair. It was I learned so much from my family and my parents, and some lessons I learned when I worked with Dick Wint,
Mhm.
and so I just wanted to create some type of a system where I would get these things down and share them with people that I care about, which is all you who are members of Coffee with Todd. And it's really probably about a 5 minute read each session. Just kind of scrapes the surface of a topic, and then eventually someday I would love to go deeper into those topics with people, and I'm willing to do that with anyone who wants to talk a little bit more. So you can just reach out to me on Coffee with Todd, and say, hey, I'd like to go somewhere and have some coffee or something, and talk a little bit more. So yeah.
I think that one of the interesting things, or the things that people might not know about you, is you have really interesting career history. So it's not just some random guy writing blog
Yeah,
posts.
yeah, yeah.
Talk to me about some of the things that you've done in your life.
Well, yeah, I moved down here in 1996. In fact, this June will be 30 years me living in the basin. So I'm almost a local,
Almost.
almost. But yeah, I came here to be in operations of a resort, and the beginning birth of a resort, which is the Running Y. I think everyone knows that. And through that period of my time, it was about 16 years there, I ultimately became the general manager and developer for the Running Y. And I oversaw Harbor Isles for a little bit, and I did Ridgewater, the housing development there. So I learned a lot about sales and marketing, food and beverage, running a hotel, running a golf operation. I had some great people that worked for me, utilities, those sorts of things. But unfortunately, there's a change in ownership, and that just didn't work out. We started to go different directions. So I was a active adult community manager for a period of time down in Sacramento, although I kept my house here. And that was very interesting, really working for the homeowners association, those sorts of things. And then I had a very quick, brief opportunity in Madras of running a recreational district there. But that's when Pacific Core searched me out, and I've been working for Pacific Power since 2014.
Okay. When you moved here in 96, was Running Y Running Y?
Running Y was basically a pile of dirt. They had shaped the front nine of the golf course, and there was no buildings at all. I got here in June of 96, and mid February of 97 was the first occupants. It was the timeshare, the Worldmark project at that time. Now I think it's Hilton or something like that. But anyway, those were the first 27 units, and the sports and fitness center was the first thing in February
Oh, wow.
of 97. Yeah.
And you said the first 9 holes of the golf course had
Was
been.
roughed in.
Oh, okay.
Just yeah, no, it was 98 before any playing was out there, and I do remember that. Dick Wint actually snuck out there, and he did the first 9 holes, but that was actually the back 9 came in earlier than the front 9, and he did the first playing of the 9 holes there. It was kind of neat.
That's pretty. Were you there for it?
I knew he was out there.
Okay.
Let's just say it that way.
Nice. Was it so it's an Arnold Palmer designed
Yeah.
golf
Yeah.
course. And uh did you ever meet Arnold
I
Palmer?
did. I had an opportunity 2 times to meet him. He actually, under the contract, he was required to come out here 3 times. The groundbreaking, the first that, to review the process of the building, and then he came at the grand opening. And, I did get to drive around with him, when he was doing his inspection. It was really kinda neat experience because he was an artist, honestly. He would drive around and all of a sudden he would see a hole that he really liked, and he would stop the caravan, and he would get out, and then he would walk through dirt piles and stuff like that through it, and, keep this tree, make sure this bunker is a little bit closer, make sure, this green is a little bit bigger in this area. And so that was a really, really neat experience. And then when his third time, I got to meet him and got to know him a little bit better. And I had the opportunity to drive him back to his airplane. He was a pilot. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he flew his own jet.
Okay.
So I got to go to his jet and pick him up and his pilot and his entourage. And I got to drive them back, and I got to ask him some neat questions, and got to know him a little bit better. So yeah, it was a neat experience. Great guy. We lost a legend there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um with the process, I think a lot of people will never be involved in the process of developing a resort.
Yeah.
But were there some things that you learned during that process that like anybody could use? Are there a couple things?
Well, I'll say it's good business practice, right? Okay. I think, you have to build a great team around you. Okay. I've always said a resort is like a great diamond ring that you're going to give to someone you're asking to marry. But if you're a jerk, they're going to say no. Okay. It's the people
Mhm.
that matter. So I was very fortunate to have a very strong team around me, people who knew their disciplines and cared. And so I would say that's just in business. You just need to put the right people in the right places, and make sure they care.
Mhm.
So I was very fortunate for that aspect of. And the other thing I would say is, in my situation, I was very fortunate that Geldwin was my banker. Okay, so they believed in the product, and they wanted to see the product succeed. They care so much about Klamath Falls. The Went family deeply cared about Klamath Falls, and so they very much invested in this community, not just the Running Y, but a lot of other things in this community.
Yeah.
And that was very fortunate too, that I had a great banker.
Mhm.
So
You talked about team building, and I know sports is a big part of your life and a way that you give back to the community
yeah,
now.
yeah.
So, give me some sports wisdom for business owners.
Well, you're kind of hinting that I officiate high school basketball. I think that's what
You
you're
are one of
you're
those
leading me
people.
into. Yeah. So let's say put it this way. I think if anyone wants to ever become a great manager, become a high school official, because you learn so many very important traits officiating a basketball game that you will use eventually in a management. So, an example, if you have a coach screaming at you, you can't ignore it. You have to address the issue immediately. That's good management practice. That's good basketball practice. Okay. You have a bunch of things going on, and you're watching all of them, but you don't control all of them. Okay. And then you also have the outside parents,
Mhm.
people who are watching you, and sometimes you have to zone them out, okay, because you know what you're doing and you know your job, and you want to do it most effectively as possible. And sometimes you got to zone that out, and you also always face criticism,
Mhm.
right? So it's a good way to learn how to handle criticism. So, yeah, I think there's a lot you can learn being a basketball official, and if you're interested, give me a call because we need more.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was thinking about that. I remember when you were chamber president, and we were first started working close together in that you shared a lot of sports knowledge. Is
Mm.
basketball your favorite sport?
It's my favorite sport to officiate.
Okay.
I love golf, and I'm a avid golfer. In fact, after this, I'm going golfing, so I'm thinking about that. It's just a great challenge that I don't think you could ever have a perfect golf game. So it's the challenge. I just love that, and being out there, and it gives me time to be by myself and really think. So I love golf. I love football. I love watching football. I like to give you a hard time about the Bears, and my Seahawks won this year, so the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
you feel really good about that. I think overall, athletics can teach you so much about life and how to address adversity and how to handle winning. Quite honestly, there's appropriate way to handle winning,
Mhm.
and there's an appropriate way of handling losing. And I think sports give you opportunity to learn that core value.
And I think it's interesting because there's probably some differences between like a team sport,
Mm.
like football, that teaches you one thing, but then something like golf that teaches you're on your own and
Yeah,
it's
no,
teaching you something else.
exactly. You're as a team, you're only as strong as the weakest link of your team, and in a team environment, just like employees, I mean, sometimes some of them are having a bad day and some of them are having a great day. And you need to be able to manage and bring them all up. And important to be able to communicate with all of them what the goal is and understand, that's scoring a touchdown or hitting a home run or, scoring a run. But I think you can take really sports and really bring them all those concepts um, into the management world. My father, I learned that a lot from my father. He was early on in his life. He was a college athlete, played football in college, and actually was a college head coach for a period of time. And so that's where I get this foundation from.
Yeah. Did you play sports in high school?
Yeah, I was not as big as I am now. So I was a beanpole. I was about the same height, but about 120 pounds. So, yeah, the wind blew me around a lot. So, yeah, I did play sports, but I was not as good as my father or my son, my oldest son, who was very good at sports. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you played anyway.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up, well, I was born out of Chicago. And
And
then,
you're not a Bears fan?
and I, no,
All
no,
right.
I'm not.
All right.
My cousin is a big Bears fan, but no, if I stayed there longer, I moved when I was 5. So lived in Southern California for a period of time there, then moved up to Seattle. That's where I did majority of my schooling there, and then college at Washington State University, and then that's where I met my wife. And then I worked for a timeshare company for a period of time. The WorldMark product, moved to Tahoe and a couple other places, but in '96 is where we found Klamath Falls as our home. And so I've lived here the most of my life, and so this is where I call home.
Yeah. And it was the job that brought you to Klamath Falls.
Yeah, yeah, it was the opportunity,
Yeah.
not the job, the opportunity.
I like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned early on that you learned a lot from your dad, and you
Hmm.
just talked about him related to sports. But what did your dad do?
My father was he started out as a college coach and a teacher, and but quickly he got into resort management, and he worked for a company called Thousand Trails, and that's how we moved up to Seattle. And there was only 2 resorts or campgrounds at that time, and now they have hundreds of them. But that to the extent he did that for a period of time, then saw an opportunity down in Central Oregon in a place called Eagle Crest, and he worked at that facility and was a developer, and that's where I got my love for it. And eventually, Dick was a part investor into the project, and somewhere in the middle of that project, Dick said, why don't Jill just take all of it? So Jill bought it, and then that's how the resort division in Gelwind grew, and Brasada Ranch, Silver Mountain, Running Y, those sorts of things occurred after that. So I worked kind of indirectly for my father for a period.
It's easy to get lost. Don't know which path to take, what to post. In the social media jungle, video is king. Your kids are obsessed, your customers are addicted, we're all hooked, and social media sites prioritize videos. So when you're ready to stand out from the crowd, reach out to 40 Deuce Films. Feeling over everything.
What were some of the, I know we talked about it a little bit about developing the resort, but what were some of the other things you learned about running a resort, like after it was built?
Well, I think customer service is an area that I really, I don't want to say I learned, but I recognize the importance of it. And in training the team that I had around me, and uh, how to understand to have look at the eyes from the customer's point of view, not your point of view, and that's really hard sometimes to do. An example I would give to you is if I said to you, uh, "Where's a good place to eat?" Well, you're going to tell me that perspective in your eyes, where you like to eat, not where I like to eat. So, great customer service learns a little bit more from you before they answer that question. So, what kind of dinner are you looking at? Is it dinner? Yes. Okay. So, what kind is it? Is it something for you and your husband, or is it something for your kids, or what? And, what kind of foods do you like? Steak, you know so as you learn more, then you can actually answer the question for them. So often we rush to want to answer the questions, but we tell them our experience. And
Hmm.
great customer service finds out what your experience wants to be and then molds our response to that.
Yeah.
So I learned that, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other things I learned there, but that's one I will highlight right now.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. I think sometimes we think of customer service as friendly,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually more than that.
Yep.
It's quite a bit more than
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. You have a story about um, Arnold Palmer is not the only celebrity you've met.
Correct.
Uh, except right now, I'm thinking maybe I don't want to mention the one I know about in case there's maybe other ones. But you did you meet Roy Rogers?
And Dale Evans, yes, I did. I had an
Yeah.
opportunity. My father was in resort development, and there was a period of time we lived actually in Arizona for a small period of time, around 85, and yeah, so I got Roy Rogers, and Dale Evans was the title sponsor of the resort that my dad was doing. It was a camping type of situation, Surprise, Arizona, called Happy Trails, the song. And so, yeah, I got to fly to California and pick Roy up one time and uh, bring him for a dinner. And I got to see the grand opening and him sing and Dale sing, and what a great guy. Uh, he he truly cared about Trigger, that horse. I mean, he get extremely emotional about it, and that horse was extremely important to him. And but if he wasn't in his cowboy hat and his getup, he would walk right by the street and you wouldn't know it. It was kind of neat, but very good guy, very good ambassador for the old way of life and America, quite honestly. And yeah, I was very fortunate to get to know him a little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Very neat. You also ran for an elected position at least once in your life.
actually, I believe I won.
You did win. Yes, you
Yes, I
did.
did. I
So
served
you
on city
served
council.
as city council.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, just overall?
Uh, Positive. Okay. Uh, Not to get sappy, but I love this community. Okay. And it was something that I want to do to give back to the community I love. And so I went into it with those ambitions. city council, you're not making a lot of money. Okay. Actually, for the time you put in and the things you have to do and drive, I mean, your gas money to get to the meetings and back probably are a lot more than what you make. Okay. So it is really a passion of service. And I thought it was the next step for me, and I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I had to. My wife and I moved outside of the city, so I had to resign. So I served for 3.5 years. I wish I could have served a lot more. Um, and I, I tip my hat to anyone, even if I agree or disagree. I tip my hat to anyone who serves, and I think that's any one person who's thinking about being into an elected office. I think. If you come into it, let's say you're a head of a company and you come into it like I'm going to run the show again, you're fooling yourself. I mean, it is a system where you have to be working with a lot of other people. I had to work with 4 other people and the mayor. County commissioners, they have 2 other people that they have to be working, but nothing goes always your way. And you learn, you win some and you lose some, but you still give the good fight and you still present your ideas and opinions solid. And I will tell you that I learned also respect for people who had differing ideas than I did. If they came up with a foundation, now I may disagreed with the foundation, but if they came up with a solid idea and a foundation, um, I would respect them. Disagree with their ideas, but I would respect them. And there's a few people that I still today respect highly that on Facebook, he and I, or she and I probably wouldn't agree on a lot of things.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I think one thing that strikes me is everywhere in all of your history or work experience,
mhm.
if you will, it's been a lot of focused on team.
Yes.
Everywhere, I mean, even the way you're describing city council is
Yeah.
related to team
Yeah.
work. Do you prefer working with teams versus individual?
Uh, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right?
Yep.
But seeing team victories, seeing the community succeed, I don't need all the credit. I think the team needs the credit,
Mhm.
and that's my self satisfaction. What's important to me is my self satisfaction. Is quite honestly, it's what my wife thinks about me. It's what my kids think about me, and it's what I think about myself.
Mm.
Everyone else, I'm sorry, I really don't care. Okay,
That's healthy.
I mean, it's not that I don't care, but it's is putting your perspective, your priorities in the right order. So my family is one of my highest priorities. And but getting back to your primary question, yeah, I do love to see teamwork and growth. It's what I enjoyed about being a manager at the Running Y. Uh, some of the people who worked for me, even today, I still stay in contact with them and seeing their individual growth. And sometimes not that wasn't with me; that was with their other jobs outside the area. It's just self satisfying hearing sometimes them saying some of the things that I would say. A Toddism, that's kind of neat. And so yeah, I think I enjoy seeing people grow.
Yeah. Share a couple of Toddisms with me.
Uh, geez. Well, I think what's the good business reason for doing this? I think that's is something that I place that question next to my desk, and it's something that I think whenever you're making a decision, you need to ask that question. And if you can't answer it, then maybe the answer is no, or maybe you shouldn't go down that road. So I think that's one of the Toddisms. I used to have a famous enterprise car rental story that I don't want to tell here. But it was an example of poor customer service. And so people who know me, who worked for me, uh, they would used to say, "Oh, Todd's going to tell the car rental, enterprise car rental story again." they were going to abandon me, enterprise, and I will never rent from them ever again. And that happened over 30 years ago, and I'm telling everyone, don't rent from them. But anyway, yeah. So those are a couple.
Those are a couple.
Yeah.
What's the good business reason for doing that? I had that written on my whiteboard in the chamber office for a long time. Now it's written in a notebook with
Yeah.
all the ideas I don't do.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. So I'm going to bring it back we're nearing the end of our time, but
Yeah.
you've talked about coffee with Todd. So what is the good business reason for doing that?
Well, I think someday I want to, like I said, teamwork and enjoying seeing other people grow. I think that's part of the reason why I'm doing it, is because I want to see the people who read these little blog posts an opportunity to grow. And I had a person at a chamber event this past year um, come to me and say, "God, Todd, I wish I could have you mentor me." And I reached out and I said, "Yeah, anytime." Now that person hasn't reached back out to me, but I will say this: it kind of inspired me to start writing this and saying, "It's time to do it. It's time to write these things, get these things out on paper." Can I develop some of these ideas, blogs, more into chapters and maybe a book? Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how this goes and then maybe opportunities to speak and talk to groups about this. So it's something I'm just having fun doing, and we'll see where it goes. I'm not putting any judgment on it.
Yeah, that's what. Is it hard to put yourself out there in writing like that?
It expands your comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure this expanded your comfort zone, right? But expanding your comfort zone is healthy. So I'm expanding my comfort zone. If you knew me younger, English and writing and reading was very difficult for me when I was a young kid, and so for me to be doing this today, uh, if you knew me when I was in second grade, you would say, "Oh no, you would never do something like this." And but it's something I'm kind of proud of myself doing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I like it. Well, that's awesome. I'm going to ask you the 3 questions I ask everybody now. If I gave you a check for $250,000 to make a difference today in our community, what would you do with it?
Wow. There is so much that we could do. Um, I think, and this check wouldn't cover it all. Maybe it cover the design, but water storage.
Okay.
I would put the 250 into designing a place to store water, because I see water is the great divide of our community, and I don't want it to be, but it is.
Yeah. Great. Tell me about one of your role models.
Well, I'll say my father. He came. I don't want to say from nothing, but a very blue collar family. First one to go to college. Played college athletics. Was very successful in his business life, and if I could just achieve a quarter of what he's achieved in his life from where he came from, I'll be a great success. So, yeah, I'm very fortunate that he's still with us, and I still get to talk to him a lot about this stuff.
That's awesome. Describe your perfect Klamath day.
About 72 degrees, sunny, wind slightly out of the south, about 2 to 3 miles per hour, going with me on a par 5, so I can gain some distance on my drive. And you know what? Today was a great day. Can I? I'm sorry, I don't want to go long, but can I describe why?
Sure.
I was talking to my boss about this, who lives over in Grants Pass, and we were talking about, why would you ever want to live in Portland? And I was driving from the running Y out to a place that I get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea every day. And this morning about 6:15, I just got to kind of on my drive, kind of look around. And God, we live in the greatest place in the world. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, blue skies, The sun was coming up. You saw the farm fields. You see cows out there. We're not in back-to-back traffic. A 10-minute drive takes 10 minutes. And then I went to a place that people know my name, and smiled when I get there, and I could have a friendly conversation with not just the employees, but some of the other people in the coffee shop. And you don't get that everywhere, right?
Right.
And so we got to be, we're really blessed on where we live. I hope people realize that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today, and thanks for sharing
I
those
really,
stories.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate you. And thank you to our producer, 40 Deuce Films.